All right, good morning. It's a Monday, if anybody's keeping track. I know that's a little bit harder when we're stuck at home and doing things, but I figured a good way to kick off this week would be having a chat with another person. I'm finding it's a really good way to just get me up in the morning and get me moving, and it's something that's actually kind of a nice thing to do instead of meeting for coffee at a coffee shop where, drinking or eating whatever while we sit down and have a chat together. So today I'm excited to bring you a former instructor and a former coworker of mine, and probably the guy that had the coolest accent out of the whole team. So we're here today to talk with Mr. Chris OHare.
Hey everybody, thanks for having me on, Logan. It's a pleasure to talk to you.
Awesome. Well, again, thanks for, carving some time out to do this. Chris and I worked together originally inside of the Steve Nash Fitness World Club at the North Shore. I went over there to be the FM at the same time that I joined the education team. So I was doing a little bit with education. I was still running a club. And Chris was one of the really, really, really good trainers on the team.
With an accent, apparently.
Yeah, well, I feel like that helps, man. Sets you apart.
It's not much of it left, but yeah, I'm sure it sets me apart.
So Chris already had a pretty full book of business. He'd been on the team for a while. And so I kind of leaned on him as a leader from within. And he just naturally was a mentor to, younger trainers on the team. And he just was a kind of a quiet leader. So made sense for me to eventually elevate him to being the assistant fitness manager in the club. And we had a ton of fun, and we were pretty successful in that club, which was kind of cool. And then we worked on opening up the brand new flagship club in West Vancouver.
Yeah.
So I said goodbye to Chris at that point. He went over to help lead that team, continued to do really well there. And then I missed him. So at a certain point, I brought him on board the education team, and he worked with us in the BCPTI program for quite some time. But we could talk about lots of things. We could talk about training, we could talk about teaching, we could talk about mentorship. But what I decided the theme would be for today is to talk a little bit about what you have to do as a trainer beyond and outside of what your job is with your clients. Because we talk in class a lot about this being kind of like a walk the talk lifestyle kind of career. And I was thinking across my team, realistically, any of them could have been, the ones that have this conversation. In order to make it for years in this career, you have to find a way to balance the work you do and how you take care of yourself. Burnout can be quite a high percentage in this industry, along with several others. So, for any trainer to make it for years at a time, it's because they've found a way to create that balance. And so, Chris has done some pretty cool things in terms of sport and physical hobby and finding ways to show up every day with his batteries charged and with creativity.
Not easy, but yeah, years of perfection, yeah. I guess you got to say.
Yeah. So, a couple of the things that I was thinking of was when we trained together to do the bike ride from Vancouver down to Oregon. That took a lot of training time.
Yeah.
So it was a really cool week, but it took, a lot of hours in the saddle to be ready to do that. And then essentially, at a certain point, Chris came to me and said, I love teaching, but I really want to, go pursue this half Ironman thing. And in order to do that training, something's got to give. So, I gave him my blessing to go chase that, because that was going to be, another thing that was going to actually bring some value to him as a professional, in addition to just the personal challenge. So that's kind of what we wanted to talk about a little bit. So, Chris, anything I miss in there? Anything you think is relevant to add to the conversation?
No, I think you've kind of hit the nail on the head there pretty well. I think finding the time to train, or as it's been put to us before in terms of mentoring us, is to try to pay yourself first, right? That's what everyone says it as, just in order, because if you're not paying yourself, you're not looking after yourself, then you can't bring your A game for the people that you're really there to look after, which is your clients. So I would say over the years, that's evolved as your goals or your ambitions would evolve with that. So initially you're finding time to work out, whatever your goal, if you're trying to, pack on some muscle, build strength, whatever that may be, or as you've spoken to there more recently, the longer endurance-based cardio ambitions, which obviously requires a lot more time, a lot more planning, and it's energetically a lot more demanding. So I think depending on the goal and the ambition, your application of that balance is going to be entirely different, right? So
So tell me a little bit, because when you first start as a trainer, we say this all the time, you actually have 0 clients. So you
You
have a
do.
lot of time. And so prioritizing your own workouts, or even spending that time in the gym, but doing it with your head up. And so, hey, I'm getting my own workout in, but I'm talking to members, I'm getting to know people, they see me doing something cool and they're like, oh, what's that? And why are you doing it? Your own workout can actually be something that if you do it authentically, can actually help you build connection to people.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that can be really valuable. But then as you get busier, it's kind of a case of the shoemaker's kids have no shoes. Sometimes when you go 8, 9, 10, 12, I think I had a day in my schedule where I had 15 clients. Like when you do that much, it becomes really challenging to then take that mental break and prioritize
Absolutely.
your training. So over the course of your time as a trainer, what are some of the goals that you've worked on? What are some of the types of programs that you've spent a good chunk of time on in terms of what your own workouts look like?
Well, I guess if you take it back to the beginning, is when you first become a trainer. I think everyone's aspiring to be bigger, stronger. They might have their idol in someone like Arnold Schwarzenegger or a sports person. You kind of assume it's all going to be very easy and simple. You kind of underestimate the amount of moving parts that are needed to align for you to sort of really reach that peak physical status. So I guess, yeah, within that, I would have started off as in the strength world, the bodybuilding world, trying to build size and muscle, which requires, anywhere from 30 to 60 minutes or up to 3 hours, depending on how intense you're going. But you can sort of fit that in throughout the day, which probably isn't the best way to do it. But like you said, if you've got 8 to 13 to 15 clients, you can't afford, well, you certainly don't want to spend an extra 3 hours in the gym working out on yourself after you've spent that much time in there looking after other people. So I found that it would fit in between clients where possible. And that could be in 20, 30-minute bursts, or you could set yourself a goal at the beginning of the day. Okay, I want to try to achieve 200 pull-ups today, or I want to try to achieve 500 push-ups, and you sort of just space them out. Now, that's scientifically probably not the best approach, but it keeps you engaged, keeps your energy up, and it keeps you getting that fulfillment of exercise, and probably helps you give better service to your clients because you're at least paying yourself throughout the day. But then there's been other days where I've had that volume of clients and I've done absolutely shag all for myself because I don't have the energy. I physically can't. And that's a challenge. So yeah, I think if you look at it over a week by week basis, how many weeks in my career where I was training that many clients did I feel I was at 100%? Probably one or less. Was there many weeks where I felt, 80 to 90%? Yes, there were lots. But then there was other weeks where I felt, half of that. And that was purely down to mismanaging sleep, nutrition, training, rest, recovery, and then overall just managing my own personal stress. So it's a really tricky schedule and balance of things that you've got to try to find right. And no week is the same because obviously, as you know yourself, you're taking on sometimes baggage or stress from your clients as well as, relieving them. So there's a lot of things to consider. But I would say, yeah, just pay yourself first. That's probably got to be the best, simplest, non-negotiable. Find a way to fit it in, and don't beat yourself up if you can't, because not every workout's going to be perfect.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I sort of like how you touched on, like how many days did I feel like I was 10 out of 10 or 8 or 9 or 5. The whole idea is that if we're able to do anything, and the same goes for our clients, right? Like our job is facilitating their success, but their job is something else. They're a lawyer, they're a teacher, they run their own business, they're a parent. So, I think there's something about being a trainer, being a busy trainer, being a trainer trying to build my business, being in business for myself, that's actually very leveling in terms of the experience that my clients are going through. Because it's
Absolutely.
not, there's students that show up, or there's people that say when they, why'd you become a trainer? They're like, well, I love working out. And so I thought I could turn that into my job.
Yeah.
Cool.
You don't get paid to work out, do you? Which is the harsh realization that people go through in those first few weeks. Like, you're not actually paid to work out. So
yeah. And also what being a trainer is for a client is actually nothing like
training yourself.
Out.
Yeah.
There's a combination of organization and accountability and enthusiasm, and you've got to have a program, and you've got to be a human, right? You've got to be able to communicate. And that's not just like put your headphones on and go find a squat rack and
And then the funny thing is, as you evolve as a trainer, as your knowledge evolves, your capabilities evolve, and therefore your ambitions evolve. So where I begun as, you know, simple-minded or more basic in my training status, I would have been happy with, you know, the typical upper body, lower body leg split or push pull legs, whatever it was working out to be, and I'd be happy with 60 minutes a day or 90 minutes every other day if I was lucky. But then you start to go down the route of postural stabilization, muscular imbalances, injury prevention, and you start to realize that the lens you're looking at from a working out perspective is far more simple than it needs to be, and you need to evolve your techniques to achieve greater results. So then your 60 minutes of working out becomes a lot less dispensable because you've got to fit in all these other things that you just learned, which is one thing I certainly struggled with as I started to change my perspective on training and obviously evolve my knowledge at the same time.
Yeah, so let's touch on that for a little bit, because I know that one of the things you did while you were working as a trainer was you continued to pursue education. So, you know, everybody has either a CPT or, you know, a university degree plus a CPT or something like that when they first get started. And you sort of come into it, you know, maybe thinking you know a fair bit.
Yep.
And then every client that you work with, every different length of program. Some people you get to do 6 sessions with them. Some people stay with you for 6 years, right? So then the client's needs change over time. The idea of maintaining the lifestyle, maintaining engagement, avoiding burnout, continuing to raise your level of service. We talk a lot about continuing education. So what are some of the courses that you took, or what are some of the things that you learned over your time as a trainer that you think really helped you evolve? And I'm sure a lot of those courses changed how you viewed your own personal workouts as well, right? So what were some of those things that you were learning?
Well, the black and white, the simplest way to look at that is, you know, new tools, right? So TRX was a new thing I was exposed to within the first 12 months of training, 12 months of my career at Steve Nash. And then within another 6 to 8 months of that, I was exposed to kettlebells. So they definitely forged the next year or more of my training, because I started to appreciate those tools in a different way. I felt it suited my body, my lever length, my height. It all suited and lended itself more to what I wanted to be doing outside of the gym in terms of endurance sports and just general activities that are not so gym specific. And then within that, you've got, you know, the whole bubble of, you know, assessing posture, looking at strengths and weaknesses, and then trying to overcome those. So you kind of get very much of a slap in the face when you go, well, I guess in that case, it would have been Nashville 1 or Core Fundamentals or one of those continuing education opportunities. You kind of realize that you're not as strong as you think you are, or the ego certainly takes a blow when you realize that you can barely hold a side plank for a minute, those kind of things, right? Or a single leg bridge becomes a hamstring cramp within an instant. You're like, okay, well, definitely my body's not functioning the way it should be. So therefore, for me anyway, because, you know, I'm similar to yourself in that I do strive for perfection, or at least as close to which I can get. So I tended to then spend a lot more time warming up, foam rolling, stretching, dynamic mobility, muscle activation, those types of things. And all of a sudden, my warm up became 30 or 40 minutes. And then I was like, okay, well, now I can't do a 60-minute strength session if it takes me this long to warm up. So then I had that kind of battle between, okay, I now need 2 hours to work out, or if I have an hour, I feel like I can't do enough. So I think it was actually a conversation I had with you at one point in the North Shore, and you were like, listen, it can't all be perfect. Just get out there and move and do what feels right. So that was I guess, a turning point for me, in that when I had the time to dispense, I would try to do what I needed to do within the 2 hours. Because again, when you're busy, it's rare that you have a gap for longer than 90 minutes to 2 hours. And then when the times that I had an hour, I just tended to condense things down and explore different movements in that time. And that for me was a healthy balance of trying to practice what I was learning and really kind of solidify those new skills and trialing them on myself first before I try them with my clients, and then also being able to play with the new tools that I'd learned. Because with things like kettlebells, TRX, or other skill sets, whether it be audible flow, mobility, dynamic movements, whatever, they tended to be less intense, and you could fit those into a shorter period of time, versus then when you were going for the big lift or the strength training, they're the bits that required a bit more creative warm-upping and proper cool down and proper activation. So they would be the things that I would use in the 2 hour gaps, versus the shorter bursts would have been condensed into 30 or 40 minutes ideally.
Yeah, awesome. So, I think there for everybody, there sort of comes a time where you might benefit, or you might really only be able to sort of work on being like a jack of all trades. You got to do a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And part of it is trying to maintain the experience of what you're then going to go teach your clients, right? So
Exactly.
I say it in class a lot. You can't teach what you don't know.
Yeah.
Right. You can't just read a textbook or a manual of some kind of exercise and then go spit out like the perfect string of
Well, you have to
cues.
feel it. You've got to understand the sensations and whatever challenges or obstacles come with that, right? So
Yeah, and I wanted to go back to TRX and kettlebell because repeatedly, those are just the two modalities that are the most popular in terms of people taking the course, but also in the sense of member engagement,
yeah,
right? When we do little TRX demos or kettlebell demos, we get way more members interested in showing up. We get way more questions about how to use those pieces of equipment. And I bet even if you looked at it right now, you probably saw people going, oh my God, I have to work out at home. What am I going to do? They probably got a TRX or a kettlebell or something
that's
like
what I
that.
have.
And that's what's been helping them stay active during this time
Yeah.
at home, right? So let's talk just a little bit about that because you hear it come up a number of times, but there's this concept of 10,000 hours for mastery or 10,000
Yeah.
words for mastery. And so, hopefully if you sign up for a personal training certification, it's because you have some kind of experience with fitness. You like it, you work out, right? I don't think anybody, comes out of, regular book learning with no sport experience and goes, you know what, I think I want to be a personal trainer. Like there's usually some kind of
There's an appetite
physical
there. Yeah, absolutely.
experience. Yeah. And then you come into the certification with whatever level of experience you have. And what I tend to find is it's either people that have started working out in the gym and maybe they've worked with a trainer for a little bit, or maybe they, followed an app, or maybe they signed up for a show with a friend or something like that, but they have a little bit more traditional experience,
Mm-hmm.
or they're an athlete and they're a soccer player, they're a volleyball player, they're a hockey player. And so they come from a really functional background, but more in the sense of a sport.
Yeah.
So those are kind of the two main places that our students come. What we're trying to do is kind of bridge the gap between those and teach movement versus muscle. We're trying to teach sort of some of the more functional tools because that's usually where they don't quite have as much experience. So again, TRX and kettlebell kind of come up as two really popular ones. So if you think back to when you took TRX, or if you think back to when you took kettlebell,
Mm-hmm.
how much time did you have to spend working on that stuff yourself before you felt like you really had a well-rounded understanding of those tools and could do a great job of teaching them to clients?
Well, I think with both of those tools, the possibilities and varieties are so vast that you're always going to be learning and always going to be trying to improve. I would say that, yeah, the TRX concept sort of was well timed with me in terms of it's obviously very much a stability oriented tool in that you can't really muscle your way through a lot of the movements, and I think that's sort of the mistake a lot of people make. They think, oh, that looks easy, I can do that, it's easy to hold a rigid plank position and do a set of rows or do a set of push-ups, and then they kind of realize that it really does, it requires a lot of core strength, it requires a lot of body awareness, requires a lot of control, and you certainly can't muscle or speed your way through it. So that was definitely a big learning point for me, but it was sort of well timed that I was sort of still already being nudged in that direction of wanting to ask more of my body and not just move the iron and build the meat. So that was sort of a nice...
Oh my God, can we name that? Can that be the title for the podcast? Move the iron, build the meat.
So that was, yeah, definitely the evolution and the start of my shift in perspective. And then I think within that it was, yeah, I was doing TRX every chance I got in the gym. I didn't ignore the weightlifting entirely, but I was definitely more kind of focused on that part of training, and I was doing probably more TRX or body weight style workouts than I was with resistance training. So that sort of set the base, if you will, or helped me to evolve a little bit faster. And then, yeah, the kettlebells was sort of more mind-blowing, maybe because of the experience and, the instructor. We had Sean Mosen from Agatsa, who was obviously quite a fun, motivating, articulate gentleman. So he told some funny stories, and that definitely helped me buy into the concept. And I watched him do all sorts of crazy things, and I was like, okay, that's something I could definitely be involved with. And yeah, I think they complement each other very well. And nowadays, like you said, I have both of those tools. I regularly go to the park, well, more so in the last 2 weeks, but I obviously bring them to the park, set them up, and I don't actually need anything else. That is every piece of equipment I could possibly want for my current training needs. And it's been a good experience.
Awesome.
And I find it is easy to coach clients, and I find that if I've been through that same evolutionary journey, I can help them in terms of trying to track what I went through, and then try to obviously cater that specifically to them, because I know they're still trying to learn the same things that I once learned. So I find that I'll introduce both of these tools within the first couple of weeks, so they can sort of really drive home what I'm trying to educate them on.
Yeah, and so I think that's one of the things that I watched you do really, really well with clients is you would be yourself. You were the coach that you wanted to be. You did that very authentically. So if someone wanted to build muscle, you can help them, but there are functional ways of doing that. And you see a lot of benefit in functional training. It's something that you do a lot of for yourself. So you were able to give people what their goal was, but you were always doing it from inside of the style that you really believe in, that you're really familiar with, that you think has a lot of value. And so, you know, what's cool about functional training or these types of tools is how many, like you said, how many options, how much variety there is. And so here's the example, here's what I'm kind of getting at. A really great coach, someone that has a ton of familiarity with a tool because they use it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be able to give a client something that fits their level. So if you've got someone who's only ever done traditional lifting and they're really strong, but maybe they're pretty tight, the TRX does have a big stability component, but there's also some really unique flexibility opportunities with it. Kettlebell is something where, yeah, there's a base level of strength for sure, but there's also an element of flow and efficiency. So when you're a really good trainer, when you've got a lot of familiarity with the tool that you're using, you can give your client a taste of something new, but at a level that works for them. And finding a way to take what they're good at and introduce them to something that's maybe one step away from that. And so that's kind of what I mean about this 10,000 reps to mastery, or this 10,000 hours. Because if you as a coach are only able to teach one small area of fitness, or if you're only able to teach people that are exactly like you, you limit the number of people that you can really help effectively. Because in order to get someone to work with you, you really have to build value around what they need, right? So we always say, like, telling's not selling. I'm not going to tell you about my program for me to try to get you to work with me. It's not about what I can do. It's about what I can help you do. That doesn't mean that what I can do is irrelevant. It's actually really important. I have to be able to do, or I have to have had the training experience that means I can work with you. But that's almost like an unspoken prerequisite. It's not the thing that I lead with that's like, oh, here's why you should pick me, right? But it is really important. So when we have that mastery, when we spend that time, when we follow our curiosity, when we challenge ourselves, when we learn things that, you know, we're not good at, when we do a single leg hip bridge and we realize our right leg's weaker than our left, but we actually work on it and get better, then we've owned that experience. And then that means it's something that we can pass on to a client. We can sort of help drip in things into their program that are going to allow them to really make that progress. So, you know, again, I think one of the things that I always really enjoyed about seeing how you did your work was seeing your consistent efforts at learning something new, practicing what you were preaching, walking the talk, even if that meant 20 minutes of dynamic mobility, grab a quick lunch break, and then get back to work training clients. You really found a way to prioritize, you know, continuing to move and continuing to explore and continuing to sort of earn that level of experience. So I had one more question that I wanted to ask you, because we talk a little bit about the cardiovascular system and programming for cardio and endurance and stuff in the class. And there's just kind of this funny reputation that trainers like pick stuff up and put it down. And, you know, cardio is like, what do you mean, lift weights faster? So there's a little bit of a reputation in personal training, at least in commercial gyms, where trainers are pretty good at, you know, the lifting stuff, and they don't necessarily pay as much attention to the cardio. So how did you go from lifting weights to doing more functional stuff to then deciding that you wanted to spend your time and effort and energy focusing on something like, you know, an endurance sport like cycling or triathlon? How do you think that came about for yourself?
That's a good question. I think it was more from a perspective of personal development, self-improvement. You know, we spent, what, 5 days cycling down the west coast of North America. Did I enjoy every minute of that? Absolutely not. Do I enjoy long endurance events? Not necessarily, but I enjoy the challenge it brings to me, right? So I enjoy that personal challenge. I enjoy that endeavor. So I guess when you have a goal like that, a measurable, specific goal and timeline that you know you can't just turn up. Like I had the Ironman that I was supposed to be doing is, well, still scheduled for June 21st, but let's be honest, it's not going to happen at this point. I've kind of given up on that, even though they have yet to announce that. So it's a little bit frustrating, but my training has certainly taken a little bit of the back seat in the last 2 weeks, just due to that sort of demoralization of the whole thing. But all in all, I found that doing the cardio in the lead up to this, which is typically 6 to 9 months of preparation, I found that enjoyable to a point, because I knew it had a measured outcome. It was for a goal that I had set myself. It was a challenge that I had set myself. I was flying home to Ireland with I had two friends at home who were also doing the race. It was a nice kind of sense of kind of camaraderie amongst us. And with that being the specific goal, it was easy to focus on it. Prior to that, triathlon, of which I did 2 previously, that was always a personal goal of mine. So I don't necessarily enjoy cardio, but I enjoy the challenge and I enjoy overcoming the challenge. So I kind of had a thought, because I figured that this would come up in terms of a question or a topic of discussion. So the kind of the way I would think about it in terms of relating it back to my clients and even somewhat to my students as well, is that we're all kind of running a race. We're all running our own race. We're all at different paces, right? But if you think about it being as, instead of just running a race, we're all running laps on the same track. We're all running at different speeds. We're all coming at it from different places. So if I'm running my 23K, 25K, it has to be up to 40K, which is a marathon in the actual race. So I was obviously very daunted by that goal and that kind of quantifiable challenge. But if I'm running my laps and I'm running 10K, 15K, 23K, I would be regularly asking some of my clients to run 3, 4, 5K, right? So I would, in kind of analogy terms, I would be passing them on the track, or I would at least be learning from their experiences as I go past them on the track. So I guess what I learned from that was me running 23K and the mental battle and the challenges I went through and the need to overcome that sort of willingness to quit is the same as me asking a couch potato or someone who's just beginning their training to go run 3K. We're going through the same mental ordeal. We're going through the same challenges. So that was a big learning point for me, in that what I'm forcing myself to go through is much the same, even though it's quantifiably different. It's much the same as what they're going through, because we're coming at it from different points. So we're on a different lap, if you will, of the race.
Yeah, I love that. So, you know, I think when we find familiarity with a workout style, or we first take on a tool, but then we get better at it and we sort of master it, we almost, when we find something that we're good at it, when we get into a routine, we sort of forget how hard it was when we first got started.
Absolutely.
And I think if we lose that connection, we sort of forget where our clients are starting from. And
yeah.
So, you know, you gotta remember that even just if someone goes from not exercising to then exercising a couple times a week at the gym, for us, they make up 2 50-minute sessions of our week. We're there early, we're there after them, we're there multiple days a week. So to us, it's like, whatever, they're just this little 50-minute chunk of the week. But it's really useful to remember that for them, coming to a training session after work might even extend as far back as the night before. They have to pack their gym bag. They have to, you know, maybe make sure they're getting a little bit of extra sleep. Then they wake up in the morning, they get their kids to school, they get to work, they're working all day. You know, maybe they want to make sure that they're having a snack at the right time so that when they get to the gym for their workout after work, they've got some energy. And for a lot of people, you know, we know the gym is busier after work. So maybe even just having to navigate that environment as it gets busy at that time of day carries sort of an extra little intimidation factor.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
And so, yeah, the more as trainers, the more as coaches, the more as leaders, we continue to seek out new skills and new challenges. And number one, I would say the number one really big benefit of that is you stay engaged, you stay interested, you stay connected, you have a beginner mind. And that's a place of creativity and growth and challenge. And so from the perspective of staying motivated, staying, like maintaining like a level of interest and connection to your business, I think that's really important. The parallel to the challenge that you experience is, I think maybe it makes you a little bit more empathetic or maybe a little bit more compassionate to somebody else who's going through the same kind of discomfort. And we know that the people skills, the empathy, the communication, the rapport, the trust, we know that those skills are so important when it comes to being a trainer. And so having a way of leveling ourselves a little bit and being able to share in that experience, I think there's a ton of value to that as well. So that's awesome.
So if you're coming at it from that way, you're going to learn from your clients as well, right? Like they're going to have a slightly different take on it. And I guess it's inspirational for both of you in that way, right? Because you're both overcoming your own challenges.
Well, for sure. And I bet between lifting weights and then getting more functional and then getting into endurance sport, I bet you've seen different clients. Like I bet you work with people that you wouldn't have worked with if you didn't change what your own personal training style was like. You now have experience in, preparing for an endurance event. And that would be really valuable if you had a client who was looking for a coach to help them do the same thing. Or I bet you work with some of your clients for even years on end. They might have come to you in the first place to lose some weight, but then after that, what comes next? Okay, well, now we could build some strength. And then after that, what comes next? Oh, well, maybe we'll prepare for a Tough Mudder or I'm going to do the Ride to Conquer Cancer this summer or something like that.
Well, so most of them still think I'm crazy for doing shit like that, but you always have to start somewhere, right?
Sure. And so the fact that you're constantly chasing something new is probably inspiring them, and it helps you stay creative around ways to give them different things to be working on. So that's awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So I don't know. I think on top of that, and this is sort of a bit of a side pod, but there was strength goals that were definitely present in my earlier years, and I had sort of set myself the goal in terms of trying to the 1,000-pound club, right? To try to get your 3 lifts up to that, and I got nowhere near it because I realized that they were very conflicting goals in that trying to be, certainly from my body shape and on being on the wrong side of 25, but you can't just go and lift ridiculous weights and then go and run 20K the next day. It just wasn't working for my body, right? So something had to give, but I think that is just another example of a goal, because I guess we're not just purely talking about endurance ambitions, but that would be a goal that I'd probably circle back around to in when I've completed an Ironman and kind of not necessarily close that chapter off, but it was something I would come back to and try to have my attempt at it once more.
Awesome. So I just kind of want to wrap it up and come full circle, because you started off by saying you gotta take care of yourself first, and I think that's a really valuable lesson, for anybody that's looking to get into fitness. So just from sort of a success routine perspective, do you have like a daily commitment or a weekly structure that works really well for you in terms of being able to keep your own workouts and your own fitness a priority? How do you do that?
Well, we can come at it from a few different ways, but yeah, for the preparation for the races, for example, that requires anywhere from 8 to 10 hours of cardio per week, which is quite a lot. That's like a part-time job on top of already doing 45 to 50 hours that we already do. So that was tough. That was really, really hard. And within that, I still wanted to lift weights because I didn't want, personally, I don't like the look of ultra marathon runners. It's not something I would usually aspire to. I get it that it makes more physiological sense to be as light and as efficient as possible. But yeah, my weight typically is in around 200 pounds, and that's where it seems to stay. So within that, I was still trying to throw kettlebells around. I was still trying to do some weightlifting, because at the end of the day, it is going to serve its benefit when you're out on the road and you're doing those constant impacts. So I would say that was a big challenge for me is that put the weights down, go do the cardio. But I couldn't always do that because I find that I get a very different feeling of satisfaction and fulfillment that are completely different but very complementary. So I always wanted to sort of try to do both with my week, and I just never got the balance right because you can't really successfully achieve both. You kind of have to give it at least a priority to the cardio element. So I found that pretty tough. And I think in a lot of cases I just had to say, you know, screw it, just go and get it done, because I found that I would always talk myself out of going running for 3 hours because that's not something I like to do. But yeah, I found the time and I broke it up amongst the week, but it was rare that I ever got the 10 hours in. It was usually 6 to 8 or whatever. So I think aside from that, it was, yeah, the goal made me do it. I put that first. Within that or prior to that, when things are a little bit, I guess, easier or less cardio dominant, it was just keep it stupid simple. We've talked about that before, right? So keep things really simple. Don't try to bite off more than you can chew. Or another analogy that I've sort of actually got from Sean Mosen as well was that if you think about every workout, you've got $50 to spend, and respectfully, you don't want to spend as much of that in one or two movements. You want to sort of keep it pretty simple across the board. Or if you know that you're going to be spending $10 or more in one movement, which for example could be a maximum deadlift, or it could be a clean and jerk, or something that requires a lot of preparation and skill and energy, be respectful of the fact that those type of movements, you can't suddenly do 5, 6, 7, or 8 of those in one session. So try to kind of coordinate so that you're spending evenly across the board and not kind of overdoing complexity or overdoing intensity at any one time.
So what I hear you saying is goal. Like, have something that you're working for, because that's going to help guide where your priority has to be. So, you know, we talk a lot about SMART goals and stuff like that, but even for yourself as a trainer, where you might be used to making SMART goals for your clients, you should have SMART goals for your own physical performance, for your own fitness goals. And so that's probably really important. And then the second thing is, have a program.
Yeah.
Like you don't just walk out onto the gym floor and do stuff off the top of your head. You'd never do that for a client session. Mm-hmm. You'd go in with a plan, you have a program, you're periodizing it, you're following some kind of progression. So doing one more thing on top of that, because, you know, we talk about the different levels of motivation. I think someone like Chris is intrinsically motivated. You heard him say, I love the challenge of it.
Yep.
So that's a great example of someone who's intrinsically motivated. And he's talking about, you know, it being difficult, but I went out and I got it done because it was important, whatever. So if we were to look at the other determined extrinsic motivation, which is where we just need a little bit of structure or whatever. Sometimes as a trainer, one of the best things that you can do to maintain your own personal fitness is to have a trainer, or to have someone write you a program. Or, you know, I posted yesterday the 28 Days Later bodyweight and band program that Dr. John Rushin put out, and that's what I decided to follow for now. So whether it's that you're intrinsically motivated, or whether you have some help, if you're somebody else's client, if you take on a program, whether it's German body comp, or whether it's a strength program, or whether it's a band and body weight program, sometimes being a client of a program can be another really helpful way of prioritizing your fitness and getting some kind of result. So just because we're trainers doesn't mean we know everything, and it doesn't mean that we have to, you know, be solo and independent and drive our own progress. You know, maybe one of the best things about being a trainer is just understanding what the benefit of a trainer even is, and therefore, you know, maybe choosing to be a product of the product is a way to learn and get past your own plateaus and be held accountable. And you know, when I know for sure I've sat down with clients in the past that talk about, you know, I like what you showed me today, but, you know, I think I'm just going to take it and do it on my own. One of the things I always say is, hey, 10,000 reps to mastery. So right now you've done 35 reps. You're not going to be able to walk away and do it really, really well on your own, like right away tomorrow. And then the second thing is, you know, hey, I'm a trainer. I know lots of things and I still have a trainer. So it's not about knowing stuff. It's about doing stuff. And so when we look at those two things, I think have a goal, follow a program, and maybe if you need it, follow somebody else's program, be a client if that's what it takes. But wrapping it up and just saying that, walking the talk, making sure that you're leading by example, learning and constantly chasing new experience. I think those are going to be ways that keep you motivated and keep you inspiring and keeping you inspired in order to be able to work with clients. So thanks, Chris. Great little conversation today. I think a couple really good gems in there in the sense of, just our own personal fitness as trainers. Always a pleasure to connect with you. And, whether there's an event or not, I congratulate you for constantly, searching out new things and challenging yourself and looking for ways to grow. I mean, we went to like a pho cooking class the other day, and that was something that we'd never done before. So it doesn't always have to be about fitness, but it just has to be about that growth mindset. So appreciate you sharing your story and your experience with us today. And, if you want to, post a little video at the park and tag us and send it our way, then we'd love to see it. I know you're not big on social media, but
it's improving. My hand has been forced. The COVID-19 has forced me to take my online coaching more seriously. So yeah, watch this space. I will be contributing hopefully quite soon.
Awesome. Well, we'll put your Instagram in the show notes, or we'll tag you when we put this chat up so that people can find you if you're going to be offering more stuff. So thank you so much. Have a great day. It looks like at least the rain will hold off. So getting outside for a workout today looks like a possibility.
Absolutely.
And great chat. Thanks so much, Chris.
Thanks for having me. Cheers, Logan. See you soon.